Hello there, sword friends. Today I'm going to tell you about this custom Ryan sword katana right here. But before I do, some disclaimers. One, it's a review sample. If you think that makes me biased, you know at the start. Two, I study Japanese-style swordsmanship. I talk about swords on the internet constantly, and I collect swords and have for a long time. But I still don't fancy myself an expert. I don't think you should either. The other bit that you should know is that this is a custom katana in the sense that I provided both dimensions of the blade and I get to pick out all the fittings. So if you think it's ugly and it's a dumb design, it's more my fault than Ryan's sword. I will put in the description down below the measurements I asked for and what I got, so you can see how close to the mark they came if you have any wily notions in your head about a sword you want to design, and see if they can pull it off. The last bit you should know is that this is $500 and really also what my intentions were for it. I was aiming to replace my Evolution Blade Light Mat Cutter, which is a $2,000 sword, or at least find something a little different than that, but that struck the same chord, in the sense that I want it to be able to be used for Iaido for hours at a time without fatiguing me, but I also want it to be my size. So that means it's going to be a little longer, and it also has to be kind of skinny so that it's light and maneuverable. And two, I need it to be an absolute demon when it came to cutting tatami mats. It doesn't have to be super forgiving, it doesn't have to be super durable, but it has to hold an edge reasonably well, and it has to really slice through tatami mats. So that was the goal that I had, and I provided Ryan's sword with some custom dimensions, and this is what they gave me. So I'm going to go on with the review, know that stuff before going into it though. I'm going to start with the kosh for the end cap, this pommel bit right here, and the first thing that you're going to see when you look at it is this awesome demon face. I think this is a really cool set of fittings, and I've seen it before on the Hanwei Oni katana, and this gives me some mixed feelings. On one hand, it's one of my favorite sets of fittings from Hanwei because it's got awesome demon faces on it. On the other hand, I respect intellectual property, and I hope Hanwei is okay with it. But I've seen this outside of Ryan sword. This is not a Ryan sword related issue. The fittings manufacturer that supplies a number of manufacturers in China is starting to sell these fittings, and I see them all over the place, and I bought them from another number of other manufacturers as well, but they originate from Hanwei. Now, how does this hold up to the original? It's not as crisp, but it does have some silver detailing and some gold detailing on it that doesn't look like it was applied with finger paint, and generally speaking, I like it. I think overall for a sword in this price point, it's really pretty swanky. I like it quite a bit. It does have shitodome in it that are cast in, which I find kind of funny. These are usually separate pieces, but clearly it was just part of the mold that they used on it, and the patina has held up reasonably well. It's not degrading quickly. But the more important factor, other than is it cool looking, which was something I was also going for, but is how is it held on? How is it situated? Well, one, it's not loose. I've used this sword quite a bit, and it's not loose. If the koshira comes off, that's a bad thing, and they can come off sometimes very easily. It's a downside of a number of mass production swords that come out of China, is that this ito tends not to be tight. The koshira comes off, then the whole handle comes unraveled, and if you don't catch it quick enough, then either you have to have it rewrapped by a professional, which can cost hundreds of dollars inside the United States, or you end up with like hockey tape, or you have to lacquer it or super glue it or make some sort of concession to how awesome it looks coming from the manufacturer. So I'm happy to report that it's on there. There is some bunchiness around the ito here. It simultaneously looks like it's too much and not enough. It like curves in but then gets bunchy. It's a little bit weird, and it's more or less the main issue that I would have with the handle is this little bunchiness right here, which is pretty minor for a $500 sword. Now, there are companies that do these really, really well. Ryan sword is doing it right where it counts. There is some blemishes in terms of the bunchiness here. The diamonds wander around a little bit, but the handle is really pretty solid in all the ways that actually matter. This, if it's an aesthetic thing that bothers you, then I can't guarantee you're going to get a sword that's going to avoid it outside of some of them that really do handles well. This is overall pretty good in the realm and the price point that Ryan sword is playing in. So I digress. There's other nice things to say about it though. The knots don't stand too proud and are quite tight, and that brings me down to the ito. Now, the ito is one of my favorite things here, not the color that I chose, though I don't necessarily mind it, but that it's tight. If I really push on these diamonds, they don't move around really at all. I can get them to budge a little bit, but this is exceptionally tight for a $500 sword. Very often I don't see ito this tight, and it's great because, again, one of my goals was to be able to use this for hours, and if the ito is loose or moves around when I push on it, I find that I tend to hold it really, really tight. My hands get fatigued more quickly, and training with it for hours is just out of the question because I'm going to get exhausted in 15 minutes. So that's embellishment. I won't get exhausted in 15 minutes, but maybe I will. I don't know. It depends on how loose the ito is. I do find it to be a factor. This is tight. It's comfortable. And so good job to Ryan sword. It's also reasonably even. The diamonds are not perfectly shaped. They do wander a little bit, but generally speaking, for the money, I'm not complaining. Now, the color that I chose was this goldish color here, and I will note that it shows crud pretty easily. So it's not as bad as like white Ito. It also is synthetic. I think it's got the kind of slippery feeling that I don't necessarily always feel in real silk, and it absorbs oil from my hands pretty quickly. So in a seminar, when I'm stacking tatami mats up and my hands get filled with dirty trench water, all that goes on here and can be a little, well, it diminishes the look. It's going to look aged, worn a little bit quicker than some other pieces will. To me, I think thematically, it's going to add character. I'm not bothered by it. At the same time, no, if you choose this color, it does tend to pick up oils from your hands a little bit more visibly than some others do. Now, black Ito is what I chose under here. I can't say that I mind that. I think it accents everything well, and I'm happy with how Ryan Sword did it. I believe I also chose a full wrap of Samegawa, and I don't see any like lines or panels or anything problematic on the sword. Overall, it's very solid. It feels tight. Everything is nice. The Menuki are little like demon guys under here. They're reasonably flat, so they don't stand too proud, but I can feel them a little bit in my hand. I can't necessarily tell what they are though. They kind of blend in with the mush. I wouldn't mind some more pronounced demon faces or some swirly Mitsudomes or something, perhaps. A missed opportunity to choose my own Menuki, but I digress. I'm going to move up to the Fuchi area here. Actually, before I do, I will comment on the shape. This is a handle shape that is a little bit more bulbous than I'm used to seeing from some manufacturers. It's just beneath the axe handle side of Hanwei. Now, that means it's walking the edge of comfortable. If it were too much bigger, or really any bigger, I would probably say this is not a super comfortable handle and it should be a little more narrow, a little smaller. But as it is, I can index it well. It feels good in my hand. I don't really have any problems with it. If you tend to like larger handles, you will like this one. I tend to prefer smaller ones though, despite the sausage fingers that I'm rocking here. This is on the edge though of what I would say is comfortable. As it is comfortable, but it's kind of on the edge. It's teetering on too much. And so that brings me to this Fuchi here, where there are some ledges, some gaps that could be filled by making the Fuchi a little wider. It would transition well, but if they had done that, then I think it would be too big, or it might have crossed that line. So I'm glad they didn't. The gaps or little ledges that I see here are exceptionally minor and don't really impede. They don't catch on anything. They don't disrupt the ergonomics. They don't really even disrupt the visuals too well. It's worth noting that the Fuchi is maybe a little large, but at the same time, I'm glad they didn't fill it all the way, I guess, because the handle is already right on the edge of what I would say is comfortable. As I move up to the Fuchi, though, again, we have the Oni Katana fitting in that there is a cool demon face here with some golden eyes. Can't say that I mind the look again. I'm digging it. And as I go up to the Tsuba, what I can see here is that this fitting choice that I got had a different Tsuba than the original Oni Katana fitting. And what that does is address the concern that I had. One thing that I said about the Hanwei Oni Katana is I didn't really like the Tsuba. It didn't have enough demon faces on it. So here is a Tsuba that goes with some more demon faces that fits in even better. The downside is it reminds me of Mount Rushmore. It's an American monument where there's like some faces that are too close, like, I don't know, like a just two demons that are like nut to butt right next to each other, or not even quite that. They're just, I don't know. They're in this intimate position that looks a little odd, is a little bit jarring. I don't necessarily mind it, but it does put a little bit of busy in this spot. And while I like the Tsuba more than the Oni Katana one, the placement here is just a little goofy. At the same time, it couldn't go any differently. This demon face has this little spike that pokes out the end. And this is the only place this is out of the way. And every now and again, it catches you, and it's a little pointy, a little irritating. It's rounded in a way that it's not like breaking the skin or anything, but it can catch on things. So if I reverse the Tsuba, then it wouldn't look quite right, and this point would be on my obi and potentially catch on things, or catch on my hand in a way that's uncomfortable. So it needs to be posted this way or placed on this side of the Tsuba and have this orientation. At the same time, it's a little weird. It's a little weird looking, a little busy, and a little odd with those two guys living next to each other. I digress though. The rest of the Tsuba is nice. It has a cool little facet on the front, or a little demon face on the front of it as well. And overall, I like the pairing, though moving the demon or removing the horn, or I don't know. It's also a little bit weird. Could use a little redesign on my part. If I move down from there, I have the Habaki, and the Habaki is not the greatest. Now, I provided dimensions here that required something beyond the typical Habaki, and this one just looks a little not as great. And I wish that more Habaki for larger size swords were made from Ryan Sword, that it was an easier thing to deal with, but this is just, it's doing the job, but it's one of the least ideal parts on the sword here. Now, in terms of being a Habaki, it is doing what it's supposed to be doing, but it just doesn't have the dimension and the shape. It rides along the edge, and it makes the base of the sword look a little weird. The Habaki should be a better shape than it is. Not necessarily on a $500 sword that I provided custom off-the-wall dimensions for. At the same time, I'd like it to be shaped a little better. It does the job that Habakis are supposed to do, though, in that it provides tension around the Koiguchi area and will act as a shock absorber and all that stuff. It's not functionally not doing its job. It's just a little unsightly. But like I said, it goes in and out of the scabbard well, and that brings me to the scabbard. So it's got this mother of pearl look on it is the first thing that I'll address. And color-wise, this has tons of different color. It has the gold color from the handle. It has some greens and blues and whites and blacks in it. And so it's pretty easy to find things that match this. It's also just kind of cool looking to have this organic material in it. And I'm surprised that a scabbard like this with all this mother of pearly looking stuff in it was available in a sword that was $500 that was also custom shape and likely had to be made to fit this sword in particular. The sword, the saya glides in and out. It is a foreign Koiguchi, but I believe a wood kurigata right here. And then it looks to have some horn kojiri at the end. Actually, this kurigata, I don't know if it's wood or horn, but I digress. Anyway, the rest of the scabbard, it's pretty bulbous. At the same time, this is like a weird material to work with, so I'm not mad that the scabbard doesn't have like dimension and taper and stuff to it. I'm elated that it came with this kind of cool organic-y looking stuff for the money, so I don't mind that it's a little bit on the thick side. At the same time, do know that came with some horn parts. That's great, and it also glides in and out reasonably well. It's quiet, it's not raspy, so if I'm training with it, it does all the things that I need it to do. This mouth could use a little bit of fiddling with, but that is par for the course, and I'm happy to do it. It's not anything beyond normal maintenance for using a sword. I just haven't gotten around to doing it yet. I chose this brown Sageo with white on it. I thought it would be a good accent, and I'm glad that I did. It blends reasonably well, and I'm happy overall with the outward aesthetic appearance. It's different than swirly Mitsudomes all over the place, but I have had a lot of swords that look like the black on black with some blacky black, so something a little different than that is fun. This also visually draws a fair bit of attention in the dojo. It has a fair amount of bling to it, which is fun. People are interested in asking, what's going on, and it's a chance to talk swords, which, as you may be aware, I'm happy to do. All right, so now we're going to talk about the blade, the pointy stabby part, and there's a fair amount to unpack here. I will put dimensions again in the description down below so you can see what I asked for and what I got, and I believe what I asked for versus what I got is pretty close. There are some tolerances that I gave, and for the vast majority of things, they were met. I also don't know that I asked for it, but I believe they provided a Honsenmai blade, which is kind of cool. I can make out a lot of activity in the surface of the steel, which should be noted. Also something I find very surprising for a blade at $500. But this has a lot of activity in it. There's a lamination line that I can see. There's plenty of folding and cool stuff to look at. The lines on the blade are reasonably clean. I can make out some tool markings and rippling in the bohi, which is common, but generally speaking, the surfaces are all flat. It also came very, very sharp. Everything polish-wise is quite nice. They also included, I did ask for an engraving, but this is an etching, so it's a black Mitsudome stuck in there. No complaints. Engraving means like removing metal with a chisel. That's probably more expensive. Etching is probably cheaper for $500. I'm not complaining. There's a swirly Mitsudome on here. The sword did not completely avoid those entirely, but there's some on here. It's tasteful, and it's a good example of what you might want to put on a sword if you happen to have one made. From there, though, this is also a Hira Zukuri blade, which means that it's just one wedge shape. Now, there's a bohi in it, which probably from some angles gives it the appearance of a kind of standard profile katana, but there's no bevel. It's just one wedge shape is what this is made to be, and that was made so that it would be a even more devastating cutter, which I can say this is. It cuts very well. And not having to make those bevels is probably not an easy thing to do. It's probably a harder shape to make consistently, but at the same time, they've done it really well here, and I can tell you that it does the job that it set out to do. I wanted it to be maneuverable, light, cut very well. This does that. Now, at the same time, I can tell you it's a little different shaped than the average, in the sense that I can flex it quite a bit easier than I can a katana that I'm used to. They often have less taper in them than this one specifically does, so it's a little bit more flexible than the average bear, but that adds to the weight and the feeling that I was going for. I wanted something lighter that did that job that cut. So I needed something wide, something thin, something light. They've really actually done all of those things, and it feels really comfortable in the hand. What that means, though, is that this is fundamentally a dedicated Iaido and lawn mowing blade. I don't know that I would bring this to war, but that's not what I designed it to do. I designed it to be a practice tool, which it is. It feels good in my hand. It's long, but it's not too heavy. So when I'm doing Iaido with it, it's comfortable to move around. I feel like I can train with it for hours, and they've also nailed all of the other little things that, or at least done a serviceable job on all the other things. The Ito isn't perfect, but it's tight, so I feel connected to it. The handle is reasonably well shaped. The sai is quiet. As a practice tool, it's very comfortable to use, and I feel like I could bring it through an entire seminar without getting fatigued. When it comes to cutting, that's the next side of it, and I can tell you that it does the job. Now, when I cut pool noodles and stuff, it does a good job. It did better when I honed the edge up. Water bottles had some mixed results in the sense that it could cut them, obviously, but when I cut through the neck of a water bottle, I ran into a slight little deflection of my edge. And this is important because I'm trying to find basically a blade that serves the need of my Evolution Blade LMC, a $2,000 sword. That sword had the exact same problem when I cut the neck of a water bottle, in that it had very similar results in the edge deforming slightly from the neck, the thick plastic of the water bottle. This is really designed to cut tatami mats in the hands of a practitioner who has cut them before. So it's not going to survive super bad cuts, even on tatami. If I get into a slat fight with a tatami mat, this is going to bend pretty easily. However, it does also cut them quite well, and the hardened edge here is going to hold an edge reasonably well. It's going to bring me through hundreds of cuts in a seminar before it needs to be sharpened. That edge, however, is somewhat fragile. So if you're cutting through the neck of water bottles, if you're cutting beer cans, if you're cutting 2x4s, this is probably not the design that you want to go for. But that brings me to the intended target, tatami mats. I put a tatami mat out, I cut one, I had some wood in it as well. It cuts like a laser beam. It is very, very serviceable in the cut. And if I hone the edge up just a little bit, it was parting mats really, really well. And I wasn't feeling the wood inside either. And it held up to all those cuts really well. I didn't get it to bend, even doing some bad cuts, which I was actually kind of surprised by. I thought the shape would be more prone to taking a bend. It actually stayed reasonably straight until I intentionally tried to bend it. Slapping it on the side of my stand, I definitely expected it to bend because I expected it to bend sooner. And it did. It would take a bend if I slapped it on the side of my stand. Most differentially hardened blades do, but it didn't bend easily, which I was actually a little bit surprised by, because a differentially hardened folded blade that's very thin, that's a recipe to get a sword that is going to bend easy when I'm doing cutting, and that didn't happen here. So overall, I don't think it's going to impress a lot of you because it took a little bit of a ding while cutting water bottles, but based on the design, this big wedge shape with a very, very fine edge, and basically replacing this, engineering it to replace a sword that had the exact same thing. I would have liked it if it didn't take a little deflection on a water bottle. The fact that it did, though, is par for the course. I'm not really complaining because, again, swords much more expensive will do that, and this is doing the thing that I did set out to do, which was be able to maneuver it and also cut tatami mats really well, and it's doing those exactly the way that I hoped that it would. Alrighty, sword friends, you have seen close-ups of the bits and bobs, fits and features, have hopefully some idea of build quality. You've also seen me move it around such as I can. You've seen me cut with it and talk about the experience, so hopefully you have some idea at this point if it's worth your hard-earned money or not. And it's time for me to answer the question, do I personally think it's worth the $500 asking price? And this time, I can say yes, and I can say yes without any concessions or caveats or anything like that. Yes, I think this is an incredible value. I think it's absolutely worthy of your consideration. I'm really surprised, frankly, that this is what it cost. I asked for mother of pearl scabbard, some etching on the blade. I asked for custom dimensions, which are not easy to pull off on a blade that is longer, that required some extra work and probably a special scabbard to be made, and all of it was done for $500. It's tough to find stuff like this, tough to find deals for tall folks or long blades, especially when they're folded and you want some special things done on them. So the fact that they were done well where it matters and done on a budget of $500, I find to be an incredible value. So yes, I think it's worth it. I'm really happy with it. I'm also happy that it checks the boxes that I set out to do, which is more my responsibility than Ryan's swords, but it moves well. It's comfortable enough to move around. I can practice with it. It feels like a sword. It moves well in the sense that I can do things for long periods of time and not become fatigued without having to tuck it back in the bag and bring out a light Yaito to save my wrists. When I use it in a seminar, it's going to be comfortable to train with, which means I'm going to be able to use this sword for several hours. Then, because I'm comfortable having used this sword for several hours and know how it moves, when I use it in cutting as well, I'm going to be that much more prepared to do my best performance when it comes to that. And it does cut really, really well. So even if I'm not up to the challenge, it's capable of doing some of the work for me, which is just fantastic. So I'm happy with my design. I'm happy with how it came out. I'm happy with what Ryan Sword did. There are things that I would like to see improved, but for $500, they're doing a really solid job here. At least that's what I think. Anyway, I'm curious what you think. Would you have made different choices? How do you think what I asked for came out in the end? Do you think they did a good job? Would you have made different changes? Do you think that Ryan Sword is capable of bringing whatever katana you have in your head you're noodling on to life based on what you saw here? Anyway, those are my thoughts. Hopefully you found it interesting. Thanks to the folks at Ryan Sword for providing this. I had a blast training with it. I'm going to have a blast of training with it. Cheers, and thanks for watching.